Today I'm going to show you how to take a simple 3D model in Rhino, render it with Enscape, enhance it with AI using Midjourney, refine it in Photoshop, and finish it with stunning details using Magnific AI. Whether you're an architect, designer, or just curious about mixing 3D and AI, you're going to see the full process, from modeling to final artwork. Here's a quick look at what we'll be creating, and yes, everything you see here is made with just a few essential tools. If you've ever wondered how to use AI without losing your design style, this video is for you. I'll share not just the steps but also the tips to keep control of the design and not let AI take over. If you enjoy full tutorials like this, consider subscribing, and if you want access to bonus project files and extra workflows, you can check out my Patreon. Links are below. Okay, so now once here in Rhino, what we are going to be doing is to model our organic architecture and also model the environment, just to add a little bit more of detail to our design. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to create a line for the reference of our height for our organic 3D modeling. So let's jump into the front view, and I'm going to be typing in polyline. Now the height of our design is going to be 10 meters. And to help me out, I'm just going to be activating grid snap down here. Click on the origin, take the curve up and type in 10. Hit the spacebar, and there we go. We have the reference curve for our height. Let's jump back into perspective mode, as we are going to be now defining the area of where our 3D model is going to be, for which I'll be using the ellipse tool. So I'm just going to be typing ellipse, or you can alternatively go to this left bar over here where you're going to be seeing the ellipse tool. Again, I'll be selecting the origin, take the curve all the way over here, and now I'll be defining the length. Alright, so this is looking good, and now we have to define the curvature of our 3D model. So again, I'll head over to the front view, and in this case, I'll be using the interpolate curve tool. I'll start from this point all the way over here and then downwards again. Make sure that you are not ending on the middle, which is this polyline right here, so that we avoid symmetry. Now I'll be taking this control point over here and finally to this point right here. Let's go back to the perspective view. So this is what you should end up with right now. If I select this curve, you'll see that I still have the control points from it, which I can still manipulate. So if I grab this one and bring this point down here, we're going to be able to change the design. I'm going to drag this line over here now. And what I want to do now is to place the shape of our line onto this ellipse. And the command to do that is called CRV to view. Now it's asking me to select the first curve, which is this one, and then the second one, which is this one right here. And there we go. We end up with a very interesting curve now. I'm going to be deleting all of these extra shapes because we no longer need it. Now to get a surface out of this curve, I'm going to be using the patch command. But before I do that, I'll reduce the number of control points that this curve has. Because if I type in rebuild, as you can see, we have 85 control points. So if I want to change something from this curve, it's going to be a little bit complicated to manipulate or to move 85 control points. So what we'll be doing is to reduce these to 20. Now click on OK. And if I just move one of them, you'll see that it's much easier to control the shape of this curve. However, at this point, I'll be leaving this shape as it is. Type in patch now. And click on OK. We're not going to be changing any of these values. And there we go. We have this surface ready. And for our next step, we are going to be building some windows with some window frames. The easiest way to do this is just by typing in dot border to duplicate the border of this surface. And now I'm going to be using the offset command. And the distance of this offset is going to be 1 meter. So type in 1. And now we have to align this curve to the original construction plane. And we can do this by just clicking once on the scaling tool from our gumball and typing in 0. Now we just need to move it downwards like this. And to be a little bit more precise, I'm going to also check it on the front view just to see that this is properly aligned. Alternatively, we can type in move and select the vertical option up here, enable grid snap, but activate the O snap. I'm going to grab this curve from this point and align it to the end point of our surface. All right, now we have to extrude it. So let's pick it, type in extrude CRV, and make sure that on the options up here, you're going to be selecting to boundary so that the extrusion matches the shape of our roof. And as you can see, the command bar is now telling us to select the boundary surface, which is going to be this one, right? Okay, and we have our windows. Now, the fastest way to create some window frames is to use the contour command. So go ahead and type in contour, and I'll set the direction from this end all the way to this end over here. The distance between each contour line, I'll leave it at 3. And now what I want to do is to turn these curves to solids by using the pipe command. So type in pipe, and the radius of these is going to be 0.05. We can better check our geometry by going into an Arctic mode and see if there are any errors, and we don't have any errors. It actually looks pretty good. Next, I'm going to be getting rid of all of my curves by typing in Celsius V. I no longer need these curves, so let's just delete them. Now grab the top surface and let's give it a thickness with the offset surface command. Make sure that the arrows are pointing out, and I'm going to leave a distance of 20 centimeters, so that's 0.2 because I'm working with meters. And there we go, our design is pretty much ready. Now let's create a nice environment for it. And to be a little bit more efficient, I'll be using Midjourney to create some references. So let's jump into Midjourney. Alright, so once in here, let's type in imagine, and I already have an idea of what I want, which is to have our architecture next to maybe a lake with a walkway and lots of vegetation. So let's type in organic curved architecture. I'll be given some hints. Let's also add fluid. Our design is simple, so let's also add simple curves. We also want a lake, a walkway, and trees. It doesn't really matter the order in which you are placing all of these words, so don't worry about it. Another thing though that you have to keep in mind is that in order to get a more realistic result, you can add the raw parameter. Also make sure that you use the V7, which is the latest version of Midjourney. And before we hit enter, I'm going to be adding photograph and also Arch Daily. This will give us a more professional look. Let's hit enter now. Okay, we can see that the architecture is not that defined, so what I'm going to do is just to copy this prompt and paste it down here, because I'm going to be adding a pavilion so that we can get better results for the architecture now. I also want a sunny day, so I'll add daylight and sunny. We can also add the materials that we are looking for. As a result, it's gonna be a little bit more precise. Therefore, go ahead and type in something like white concrete, wood, and grass. Okay, hit enter again and let's see what we get. Alright, so this is looking a lot better, and we can either go with version 2 or version 3. Both of them look very good. I think I'll be going with option 3, so update 3, and this is going to be our reference. So let's jump back into Rhino and model something like it. I'll go into the top view, and for this I'll be grabbing the interpolate curve tool, and let's start shaping our walkway. I'm also going to be following the design of our model like this, and we can finish the curve over here. Now I'm going to grab the polyline and make sure that the O-snap is turned on with intersection or endpoint options also checked. Let's close this walkway like so, grab both of these curves and type in join. Now I'm going to go into a perspective view, click on this sphere from the gumball, and we can add -1 for example. And for the next step, what I'm going to do is to define the green areas, for which I'll be grabbing with Ctrl+Shift this top surface and typing in dot border. Now let's go into the top view and type in offset. Now this is going to be the width of our pedestrian walkway, so we can leave something like 2.5. And I'm going to split this line right over here, just to give a little bit of extra design. So I'll be typing in polyline and draw this curve like so. Grab both of these curves, let's go into a perspective view and isolate them both. Now let's go ahead and trim, because I don't want any vegetation over here, as this is the area of where our architecture is going to be. Now we can grab both of these curves, join them together and type in show in order to see all of our design. And now we can split this geometry with this shape over here just by using the cut tool. Bring it down like this. Now to create a surface out of this curve, let's type in planar SRF. Now type in move. I'm going to select the objects that I want to move and make sure to pick the vertical option, and also make sure that you have the O-snap turned on. Let's move it all the way over here, and we can actually move it a little bit downwards using the gumball. And to add a little bit more of detail, I'll be adding an additional geometry, something like a curb. So again, I'm going to select this outline, type in offset, and the width of our curb can be around 0.3, or actually I want to see it a bit more. So I'm going to be adding 0.5 to it. Now I'll be grabbing these two curves, typing in isolate so that we can focus only on them. Select this outer curve, again, type in planar SRF, and we can split this by using the split command and selecting the inner curve. Now it's safe to delete this surface, and we end up with our curve like this. Let's type in show again and give it some thickness just by using the gumball. And I actually want to bring this detail a bit upwards so that it doesn't get unnoticed. And we can actually define the water by using a simple plane. So I'm going to be creating a plane that covers our entire model and drag it down a little bit up to around this point. Now, as a background, I also want to have some vegetation going on or some trees. So for this, I'll go to the top view and we can actually just use a simple plane. And I want this vegetation to cover the entire background. So I'll be using an interpolate curve and place it like this. Now I can use the offset command again. And let's type in a value of around 5 meters. I'm going to go into a perspective view and extrude this line downwards, grab the surface, and let's actually isolate them again and use the ribbon command with a distance of around 20 meters. Probably a little bit more. Let's go all the way to 100 so that this whole area will be covered with trees. Now I think the distance between these two should be a little bit larger. So again, grab this curve, type in offset, and instead of 5, let's type in 20. I'm going to drag this curve a little bit downwards and create a surface out of it, because what I want to do is to blend both of these surfaces with the command blend surface. Let's pick this point and this point over here, and this is looking pretty good. And type in show again. Okay, let's check this on an Arctic mode and make sure that no curves are on the way. So again, Celsius V and delete. Okay, so this is our 3D model almost ready. And what we want to do next is to map them correctly so that we can get some materials from Enscape. For this, I'll be selecting everything with the command cell all, typing in properties on the command bar, and now I'm going to go into texture mapping and change the type from surface to box. That's all we need to map our materials. Let's return to a shaded view and let's jump into the predefined materials that Enscape has, which is this one right here, import predefined materials, and let's see what materials we need. First, I'm going to go into ground and pick a material for our grass. So this is going to be grass 04. I'm going to hit import selection. Then I want some concrete for our roof over here. And I'm going to go for concrete 16. Now let's jump into tiles. And I'm going to be selecting tiles 21 probably, or 22 actually. So let's go with 22, import selection. And I also want another type of concrete for our curb. So let's go all the way down here. And probably we can go with concrete 01. Let's keep it simple. Now for the window frames, I'm going to go into metals and I'll just grab the aluminum one. And for the water and glass, let's jump into glass. I'll be selecting the frosted glass 07. And it doesn't really matter what other material we select for our water, as I'm going to be changing its settings. So I'm going to go for frosted glass and import selection. Okay, great. Now that we have all of the materials that we need, I'm going to close this window and type in materials on command bar. Now I'm going to select this surface, right click on grass and assign to objects. And the same thing for all of the other surfaces, for example the tiles. It's going to be all of our walkway, so I'm going to go with tiles 21, grab the curb and give it this concrete material. Now you can see that something is overlapping right here, so what we need to do is to grab it and delete it. I also want to add some grass to this back surface, so right click, assign to objects, and we can probably use some other kind of material for this. So let's jump back into the predefined assets. Again, let's go into grounds and let's select the soil one. So import selection, right click and assign to objects. Now what I want to do is to group all of the window frames. So I'll be selecting everything, and with the control key, let's just deselect everything else and group them like so. Right click on the aluminum and assign to objects. Let's go with our roof now, select it, and I think we can go with this concrete. So let's see how it looks. Probably this one maybe. Okay, this one has a little bit more of detail, so let's leave it with it. Now let's grab the windows, right click on the frosted glass and assign to objects. And the same thing with the water, right click and assign to objects. Now we need to change some settings for our water and glass. And where do we have to go for that? We have to go all the way over here to tune materials in the project, and we can actually rename these. So I'm going to again type in materials. I'm going to select it and just hit the F2 key. I'm going to type in water, and the frosted glass, I'll just type in glass. Now we can go back to the tune materials in the project. I'm going to grab the water and change the type from generic to water. Now let's head over to the glass. I'm going to delete the texture from the bump map because we don't really need it, but the color, I'll just make it darker so that it's not that transparent. Alright, so we are done applying materials to all of our objects, but what we need to do now is to import some assets. And the easiest way to distribute the 3D models here is by launching Enscape. Alright, so now that this window has popped up, let's go into the asset library, and down here you'll see the option of multi-asset placement. Click on it, and the first thing that I want to import are the trees, for which I'll be clicking on categories, go into vegetation, and on the tags, let's also check trees. Now select the kind of trees that you're going to be wanting to import. In my case, I'm going to go all the way down here, and I'm actually going to go back to the reference from Midjourney. Okay, so we have these types of trees. They look pretty nice, so I'll be selecting some that look like that. Okay, these three should do, and I'm going to be placing them on this surface right here, on the grass basically, and on this other surface at the back, for which I'll be selecting the bucket selection. And this is a very handy tool because it will automatically select each surface separately. I'm going to be selecting this one. You can specify the density of all of these trees. I'll be increasing this a little bit more over here. Click on confirm placement and apply changes. And the same thing for this back surface over here. So again, confirm placement and apply changes. Next, we'll be importing some people. So again, let's go into categories. And because we have these tags selected, let's uncheck trees. And again, let's go back to this list and select people. Now the people are going to be distributed on this walkway, right? Another thing that I'm going to be making sure of is that they are going to be walking. So again, let's go into this other category and check walking. I'm going to be randomly selecting some people. Doesn't really matter as long as they are walking. So let's just go ahead and pick all of these people so that there's not that much repetition, as that will kill some of the realism on our image. Now I'll be selecting this surface now, and we can confirm the placement, or you can actually change the distribution a little bit by clicking on regenerate. I'll be leaving this as is. I'm going to be confirming the placement and applying the changes. And unfortunately, I also had these trees selected, so I'm just going to be unselecting them again. I'll be closing this and hitting the Ctrl+Z keys. Now let's go back to Enscape and again back to asset library. Let's go into the multi-asset, jump into categories, people. Now let's just select walking and let's select the people once again and select the walkway. I'm going to be lowering the density because there's way too many people. And once you're happy with the amount of people that we can see, again, just click confirm placement and apply changes. For the next part of this video, we are going to be selecting the camera view. And you can move around Enscape by using the W, A, D, and S keys. To move a bit faster, you'll want to press and hold the control key. So let's go all the way over here. And we are going to be selecting a nice perspective. But before we do that, we actually need to define the dimensions of our render. And in order to do so, I'll be going to this eye icon, so the visual settings, jump into the output and change this from full HD to custom. I want to have vertical result. I'll just type in 608 by 1080. Now on the main tab, make sure that the field of view is set at around 50, as 90 it's a little bit too much, and close this window. Now if you see this icon over here, it says save frame, so click on it, and I'm going to be defining the view of our camera by moving around with the keys. Okay, maybe we are a little bit too far away from the architecture, so let's move in a little bit. Okay, and I think at this point we have way too many people, so what I want to do is go back over here again and hit in the Ctrl+Z keys. Now let's go back into Enscape, and I'm going to be adjusting the number of people again. Alright, this looks better. I'm going to close the asset library now, and One more thing, if we go into the visual settings, make sure that the camera projection is set as 2-point. This will fix the vertical vanishing points, if you will. And we can also change the direction of the lighting by using the Shift plus right click. So in this way, we can just move the sun around a little bit in order to have a better image. So this is looking quite nice as we have some shadows from the trees, giving us a little bit more of detail on our foreground. Now I also want to make the material of our glass a bit darker because it's too transparent. So let's go into Tune Materials in Project, go into Glass and make the color a bit darker. And here's the error. We had the glass set as generic. We need to change it as glass. Okay, now on the base color, I'm going to making it a bit lighter, something around this point. And let's check what we have. Okay, this looks better. And I still don't like the lighting, so I'm just going to go all the way back here. And I want to change the direction of the sun. And for this, we can use the U or I keys. So, okay, so this is going to be good enough. Now, what we need to do is to render this. And in order to do so, we only need to use this screenshot tab here. So go ahead and press it and just save it anywhere on your PC. And now let's jump into midjourney.com. Awesome. Now that you're here, make sure that you're logged in and head over to the Edit tab. And as you can see, we have the Retexture tab up here. So let's click on it. And how can we import the image? We just need to click on Add down here on the layers. In this case, I'm not going to be using an URL, but Add from File. And here we go. Now we can write a prompt or just use this option. Okay, and we have this type of prompt, exterior rendering with the main building, oval shaped architecture with wide overstated curves. Okay, so what we need to do is to erase everything that says rendering and change it to photograph so that we end up with more realistic results. Let's also delete the rendering part over here. And it's gonna be a good idea to also add raw to have even more realistic results. And by the way, make sure that you are on the retexture version. Now just submit retexture. All right, so these are looking great. Let's go through all of them. For example, this one has a more architecture photography vibe, which is great. This, on the other hand, looks more like a rendering, which is totally fine. I really like it too. And in here we can see that the architecture is not really following the design that we gave it, but we can see a bit more of detail on the foreground, which is awesome too. And this is also looking great, but I'm not a fan of the background and I'm not a fan of this type of lighting either. What we can do about it is to modify the prompt a little bit. So at the end, I'm only going to be typing in daylight and submitting the retexture again. Okay, these results are actually looking pretty good. Especially this one, it gives like a nice, unique touch to it. I'm going to try something else. I'll be changing V6.1 to V7. Okay, so here are the V7 results. These are not as impressive as I expected them to be, except for this one. This one looks really good actually. But I guess that V7 doesn't really work that well with retexture. So you can stick with V6.1, I guess. Alright, so I really like this one. So we can either upscale to gallery or download image. I'm just going to be downloading the image for now. And if you notice that the render doesn't really follow the design of your architecture, you can always go to Photoshop and bring the original render or the Enscape render over here, match the scaling, and by using the layers, you can create a mask by using this icon right here, and then using the Ctrl+I keys and paint it back like this. However, as you can see, Midjourney is getting really good at preserving the original 3D model. What we can do in here is to go into filter and camera raw filter and increase the contrast a little bit and also increasing the texture levels like so. Then you can click on OK and save the image. Alternatively, you can go ahead and use Magnific AI to enhance the realism and details of your render. In order to do so, go into the Magnific upscaler, upload the image, and down here you can actually copy the prompt that Midjourney gave us, which is this one right here. So let's copy it, Ctrl C, let's go back to Magnific AI, then Ctrl V, and on the optimization options, I always go for films and photography. I'm going to increase the creativity level just a little bit because I don't want the design to be manipulated. The HDR will actually add more details, but don't overdo it, as if we go all the way up to 5, it can give us some strange outcomes. I'll leave the resemblance at 0 and fractality at 0 too. On the engine, I'll change it to Magnific Sharpie and click on Upscale. And here we go. It made our image a bit more realistic, as you can see, and it also fixed some of the issues that we had. For example, at the bottom here, the shoes of this lady look a bit weird, but Magnific just fixed that. And overall, the contrast and color are looking way better. Now I'm going to show you what these options do over here. If I increase the creativity level, Magnific AI will start adding more details to the overall image, while the HDR will add more details to the materials. As for the resemblance, will resemble the original image, so it's gonna be a good idea to increase it if we have high creativity levels. Now as for fractality, lower values will actually protect our image from having any errors. I'm going to change this from Magnific Sharpie to Magnific Illusion, as this will give the AI more freedom. Let's hit upscale. And these are the results of this version. We can see a lot more of detail. For example, we now get some stains on this white paint over here, and the curvature of the architecture, it's more pronounced with these reflections. Reflections are also happening on the floor, which are looking pretty nice. I'll probably stick with this version. And that's the full workflow, from 3D modeling in Rhino to AI enhancement with Midjourney, polishing in Photoshop, and final detailing with Magnific. I hope this gave you new ideas on how to combine traditional modeling with new AI tools. Thanks so much for watching, it really means a lot. If you learned something today, feel free to leave a like or a comment. It helps me more than you think. And if you'd like to go even deeper, grab the project files, or support this kind of content, you're welcome to check out my Patreon. Link is below, no pressure, just if you want to. See you in the next tutorial and keep creating amazing things.